Hello everyone, my name is Rishabh. Welcome to day 194 of our book learning journey. Today's book, Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In by Roger Fisher, William Murray and Bruce Patton. Bruce Patton. Topic, The Science of Negotiation. How to get what you want without destroying relationships. Today, we are going to talk about something every person does, whether they realize it or not. Negotiation. You negotiate when you discuss your salary. You negotiate when you buy something. You negotiate deadlines at work. You negotiate responsibilities with colleagues. You negotiate with clients. You negotiate with vendors. You negotiate with family members. And sometimes you even negotiate with yourself. But here's the interesting question. Why do some negotiation create good outcomes while others create conflict? Imagine two people sitting across a table. Both want something. Both believe their position is correct. Both are unwilling to move. The conversation becomes emotional. One person says, "This is my final offer." The other responds, "Then we have nothing to discuss." The negotiation becomes a battle. Someone has to win. Someone has to lose. But if negotiation didn't have to work that way, what if you could protect your interest without treating the other person as your enemy? This is the central idea behind today's book, Getting to Yes, written by Roger Fisher, William Murray, and Bruce Patton. This book is one of the most influential works on negotiation. It introduced a method called principled negotiation. Instead of focusing entirely on who wins and who loses, the method focuses on understanding interest, separating people from problem, creating options, and using objective standards. The central lesson is a successful negotiation is not about defeating the other person. It is about finding an agreement that addresses the important interests of both sides. Let's understand how. Lesson 1. Negotiation is not a battle. Most people think negotiation means convincing the other person to accept your position. For example, I want 50,000. The other person says, I only pay you 40,000. You say, I won't accept less than 50,000. They say, then we are done. This is called positioning bargaining. Each person starts with a position and tries to defend it. The problem is that positions can become emotional. Once you publicly declare a position, changing it can feel like losing. The author suggests something much more powerful. Don't ask only, what do you want? Ask, why do you want it? That question takes us to the next lesson. Lesson 2. Focus on interests, not positions. Imagine imagine two employees arguing over the same office room. One says, I need this room. The other says, no, I need this room. They appear to have an impossible conflict. But suppose you ask why. The first person needs the room because it is quiet and they need to make important client calls. The second person needs it because they need the large table inside for project planning. Now the problem becomes easier. Perhaps one person needs the room for calls in the morning, the other needs it for meetings in the afternoon. The conflict wasn't really about the room, it was about the underlying interests. This is one of the most important lessons in negotiation. Positions tell you what people want. Interests tell you why they want it. When you understand the why, more solution becomes possible. Lesson 3. Separate people from the problem. Lesson 3. Separate people from the problem. Great. This is one of the most powerful ideas in the book. When negotiations become difficult, people often attack each other instead of solving the problem. Someone says, "You are being unreasonable." The other person responds, "You are impossible to work with." Now the problem has become personal. The author suggests separating the relationship from the substantive issue. Instead of saying, "You are causing the delay," say, "You have a deadline problem." Let's understand what is causing the delay. The second statement doesn't attack the person. It focuses on the issue. This, this distinction this distinction can completely change the conversation. Lesson 4. Emotions are part of every negotiation. Negotiation isn't purely logical. People have emotions. They feel respected. They feel ignored. They become defensive. They become angry. They become anxious. If you ignore these emotions, the negotiation may fail even when the numbers make sense. A skilled negotiator pays attention to both what is being discussed and how are people feeling about the discussion. Sometimes acknowledging sometimes simply acknowledging someone's concern can reduce tension. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. You just need to show that you understand what they are experiencing. Lesson 5. Don't assume the other person is your enemy. Imagine you are negotiating with a supplier. You want the lowest possible price. The supplier wants the highest possible price. It is tempting to think they are trying to take advantage of me. But what if both sides actually want the same thing? You want a reliable long-term supplier. The supplier wants a reliable long-term customer. Suddenly, there is common ground. This changes the negotiation from "how much can I take from you" to "how can we create an arrangement that works for both of us." That is completely different mindset. Lesson 6. Create options before choosing one. One common mistake in negotiation is jumping to a solution too quickly. Someone proposes one option, the other person rejects it. The conversation gets stuck. Instead, the author recommends generating multiple possibilities before deciding. Imagine you are negotiating a project deadline. Option 1. Finish everything by Friday. Option 2. Complete the most important component by Friday and the rest next week. Option 3. Add another team member and keep the original deadline. Option 4. Reduce the scope and keep the deadline. Now you have options. Creativity can turn a conflict Creativity can turn a conflict into a problem-solving exercise. Lesson 7. Use objective standards. Sometimes both sides disagree about what is fair. One person says, the price is reasonable. The other person says, no, it's too expensive. How do you decide? Instead of arguing endlessly, look for an objective standard. For example, market rates, industry benchmarks, history prices, independent valuations, published, published standards, comparable offers. Objective standards move the conversations away from I think and towards what does the evidence suggest. This makes negotiations more rational. Lesson 8. Know your Lesson 8. Know your BATNA. BATNA. One of the most important concepts from getting to yes is BATNA. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. In simple language, what will you do if the negotiation fails? Imagine you are negotiating a salary. Your employer offers 45,000. You want 55,000. Before negotiating, you should know what happens if they say no. Do you have another offer? Can you continue if your current can you continue in your current role? Can you find another opportunity? If you have no alternative, your negotiation position may be weak. Understanding your BATNA gives you clarity. It prevents you from accepting an agreement that is worse than your alternatives. Lesson 9. Don't negotiate against yourself. Sometimes people reveal too much too early. For example, a vendor quotes 1 lakh. You immediately say, actually, I can pay 90,000. You just negotiated against yourself. The other person hasn't even asked for 90,000. Good negotiators avoid unnecessary lowering their position. Instead, they ask questions. What is included in this price? How did you arrive at this figure? Is there flexibility based on quantity? Are there alternative specifications? Questions create information, and information creates negotiating power. Lesson 10. Applying the book to business. Let's imagine you are negotiating with a vendor. The vendor quotes 10 lakh. You want to reduce the cost. A weak approach would be your price is too high, reduce it. A stronger approach would be let's understand the cost structure. Which component are contributing most to the price? If we increase the order quantity, can you offer a better rate? Can you adjust delivery schedules? Are there alternative specifications that maintain quality while reducing cost? Now you are not simply demanding a discount. You are solving a business problem. That's principled negotiation. Lesson 11. The goal is a wise agreement. The final lesson of getting to yes is not simply get what you want. It is something deeper. A good agreement should ideally be wise, efficient, fair, and sustainable. The best negotiation is not necessarily the one where you extract the maximum from the other person. It is the one where both sides understand the agreement and have good reasons to honor it. That is what makes an agreement durable. What we learn from getting to yes. This book teaches us negotiation doesn't have to be a battle. Focus on interest rather than positioning. Separate people from the position. Understand emotions. Look for common interests. Create multiple options. Use objective standards. Understand your bet now. Ask questions instead of making assumptions. Listen actively. Protect long-term relationships. Think beyond one transaction. Search for agreements that are practically and sustainable. Core closing message. If there is one lesson we should remember from getting to yes, it is this. The strongest negotiator is not the person who defeats the other side. It is the person who can solve the problem while protecting both the outcomes and the relationship. The next time you enter a difficult conversation, don't immediately prepare to fight. Pause. Ask questions. Understand the other person's interest. Separate the person from the problem. Look for objective standards. Create multiple options. And most importantly, know what you will do if no agreement is reached. Because negotiation is not about proving that you are smarter. It is about finding a better solution. And when you learn to negotiate this way, you don't just become better at business. You become better at communication, better at leadership, better at relationships, and ultimately better at solving problems. Thank you.